Welcome to this Foxy Opnings DVD on 1B4. I want to talk at the outset a little bit about how I'm going to structure this DVD for you. Firstly, we're going to discuss the ideas behind 1B4. Then I'm going to show you a selection of games by the master, Sokolsky himself, to demonstrate how devastating 1B4 was in his hands. We'll then go on to look at some theory. I've pulled out most of the main lines, concentrated on essential information, and tried to show you a way forward in each of these main lines, so that once you've learned the theory, you will have a good basic grasp of how the opening works. And finally, we're going to go on to look at some modern games from the last few years where B4 has featured, to see whether it's still working at master level. But firstly, the ideas. Well, okay, from my perspective, the most obvious idea behind B4 is to create an unusual position right at the outset, which you have studied and your opponent has not. The element of surprise, the element of unorthodoxy is very apparent after 1B4. And so if you've studied these positions well, it's likely that you're going to have a head start over, well, 99% of your opponents. And so B4 is a very unusual and interesting move. Quite often it's a provocative move because that pawn on B4 is exposed, it's unprotected. Black often gets carried away in the Sokolsky trying to attack and win this pawn. Sometimes the B pawn is offered as bait in order to create a central pawn majority. It's interesting. Quite often in the Sokolsky, black takes this pawn on B4 only to find that the D and E pawns, which white has been hanging back in the opening, suddenly come forward and cramp him. It's a feature of the Sokolsky that white often gets a central pawn majority, and this feature cramps black in the middle game and runs him out of ideas. B4, well, let's just see. Clearly B4 is an attempt to gain queenside space. White advances quickly on the left hand side of the board, and well, if the pawn ever reaches B5, as it often does in the Sokolsky, black's minor pieces can be denied use of the C6 square. So it's also an idea in the Sokolsky to march forward quickly on the queen side and try to establish a spatial advantage there. Let's get rid of the colours for the moment, and we come to the final idea of the Sokolsky, which is to establish a strong bishop on B2. Clearly white is intending to follow up B4 with bishop B2, and the bishop on B2 exerts strong influence down the long diagonal towards the black king side. This is quite a common idea in the Sokolsky. White can whip up an attack against the black king if black castles too early. There's also, of course, direct influence on the central squares D4 and E5. So black, if he wants success against the Sokolsky, must sometimes play to nullify the strong bishop on B2. Alright, well that's it for the summary. Now it's time to go on to, first of all, look at some games by Sokolsky himself.